I like our call to awareness a lot. I don't know if you listened to it very well, but I want to read just a couple of sentences again. May you appreciate the unfolding of your creative joy. I love that little phrase, creative joy. And may playfulness infuse the serious purpose of your life, and may you share that play and laughter so that others may find happiness. That's our job as people of God, people of belief, people that are trying to follow that divine impulse around us, is to be that which speaks joy into the serious part of life. Who have creative joy moving in us and through us. Now contrast that to the opening lines of our movie this week. Our movie is Chocolat. If you haven't seen it for a while, I got a copy. You can borrow it. It starts off this way. Once upon a time, there was a quiet little village in the French countryside where people believed in tranquilité, tranquility. How many of you have lived in that village? Or maybe better asked, how many of you have, don't go to that video yet, we need to show this, we need to show the next picture. How many of you have tried to be mayor of that village? Right? And tried to make tranquilité happen around you. Try to make it so that these people act the right way, these people be the right way, these people do it so that it's easy for you, and you have tranquility. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be amazing if that would happen? And then it says, through good times and bad, famine and feast, the people held on to their tradition until a sly north wind blew in. Well, look at this picture. Next one, please. This is that sly north wind blowing in. And this village is kind of a drab time. It's the ending of the winter season. There's lots of grays and browns. And she comes in a bright red cloak. This is Bian and her daughter Anouk. She comes into this town and she definitely stands out. She comes in during that solemn season of the Christian year that we call Lent. That season where we're supposed to be introspective. And she shows up on a Sunday, so of course everyone's there in church, well, except for Armand. Because Armand is kind of that grumpy old woman that's been ostracized by everyone. Show this next picture. Here's our, oh, there's Bian. She opens up a chocolate factory, but show the next picture. Here's Armand, and you can see the scowl in her eyes. And the reason why maybe some people have rejected her and pushed her away. And she's estranged from her daughter and son and grandson, more from the daughter than from Luke. Daughter's Carolina. And Carolina's worried about how her mother acts and the gruffness of who she is. And so is afraid to let her be with Luke. But, of course, Carolina and Luke are off to church like everyone else, including Père Henri and Comte de Renaud. He is in charge of all this stuff, and he takes his job very seriously. He is there trying to help and make sure everything works according to plan. That tranquilité survives in this town. There you are, some of you. There's also another young woman there named Josephine, and we'll get back to Josephine much later. She's one who is on the verge of being ostracized. She's not quite right. She disturbs the waters a little too much. But she finds a place with this other woman. She finds a place with Beyond because Beyond looks at her and sees her different than everyone else is. But then Beyond sees a lot differently. In the middle of Lent, that penitential season of the Christian year, she chooses to open a chocolate factory and have these wonderful gifts of chocolate out there for people. She refuses to go to church like a good little girl, and she even goes to the Comte and confronts him about how he's acting and what he's doing. And that doesn't sit well in this tranquil village. Isn't simple in this space. So she's told in return by the Comte, you'll be closed and out of business by Easter. How many have heard that at some point or another in your life? I'm going to close you down. I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen. See, the Comte tries to manipulate her as he does everyone else. Tries to make her do the right things and act the right way, but she has a different strategy in mind. Her strategy is joy. So watch as we see both the Comte and his interaction with Père Henri, but also how Beyond comes back to help Armand.
Crying over you ain't nothing but a hound dog. Crying time. Well, you ain't never gonna ride it. You ain't no friend of mine. I have a weakness for American music, Monsieur le Comte.
How long have you been with us, Père Henri?
It will be 5 weeks.
Your predecessor, Père Michel, he was with us for 5 decades.
Yes, well, I only pray I can live up to Père Michel's example.
Yes, that's my prayer also. I looked at your sermon as you requested. I've made 1 or 2 notes.
You're very kind.
Not at all. Oh, one more thing. If you haven't seen the new chocolaterie, perhaps you might like to take a look. It's important to know one's enemy. Don't you think?
Hey, where's my kiss? Where are you going? I'm going.
What's the day called? Early Mexican brothel.
Ah, if I need help, I'll ask for it. What do you see in it?
Not a damn thing.
Oh, it's a game. What do you see?
I see a cranky old woman too tired to play games.
I've got just the thing for you.
That little girl of yours, does she mind it?
Mind what?
The way you move her from place to place.
Oh, she'll be fine. I think it's good for her. You know, seeing new places, meeting new people.
Your cinnamon looks rancid.
No, it's not cinnamon, it's a special kind of chili pepper.
Chili pepper and hot chocolate.
It'll give you a lift.
What tastes like? I don't know.
Instead, how often are we the Comte saying, you gotta know one's enemies? Right? We're feeding words to Père Henri saying, don't judge them. At one point he gives them the message where the Père says, how are we going to resist evil in? And he never finishes the sentence, or he finishes, but we don't hear the end, because he's pointing out the way we do, where is that wrong? Right? And all of that, and instead we could be figuring out how to put just a bit of chili pepper in. And it's so easy to do the one, isn't it? Because we already have right answers. We have all these things that make it easy for us to be able to say, here's what you ought to do. Here's how you ought to act. Here's what you ought to be. And somehow that doesn't quite change us for the better, does it? We like to have those nice little packages because it's simpler to deal with each other that way. Because sometimes when you guys get out of a package, you're a little challenging. And so we make those packages, but when we do that, we overlook each other. This week I was at one of my holy spaces. It's called Einstein Bagels up here. I go there every Thursday and sit for a couple hours and relate to the people that come in. And this week it was really fun to watch. I sit right by one of the doors. There's two doors there. And I sit by this one over here. And I watched a mother get out of her car and then get her son out. He was about 2-3 years old. She set him down on the ground. He immediately ran over to the building and was ready to go inside. And Mom also came over here, but she went to the real front door, the one where you're supposed to go in, because she knows that's where the cash register is over there. But he came over to my door. And he knew that was the right door. And Mom's over there at her door saying, hey, come on over, this is where we go in. He says, oh, no, I know this is the right thing. I couldn't hear a thing, but I could see what he was saying. This is the right door, and you know how he knew? Because there was a picture of a bagel right there. He knew he had the right answer. And Mom was over there saying, no, you got to come my way. He was pretty insistent. And she finally came over and figured out that this door got her into the bagel shop too. It's amazing how that happens, that there's more than one way to get into the bagel shop. And don't we all get caught up in our right answers, whatever they are? Don't we all get caught up in the ways we see or act or be, and we're busy yelling at each other to go through this other door, the only right and perfect door? And I saw a cartoon this week that said this. It was a doctor talking to one of his patients, and he said, this surgery could substantially extend your life. So you might want to wait until after the election to make your decision. Right? Because we know elections change us, right? And depending on what happens in that election, we're not quite sure if we want to extend that life, do we? And we gotta decide. If we go past that changing moment, we allow it to move in us and change us. And we don't want to. But that change that happens is remarkable. So one of my favorite scenes from this movie is after Beyond has been there for a while, and that chocolate has infected the city. This is what happens.
Each time I tell myself it's the last time, but then I get a whiff of a hot chocolate, or seashell, those mood things, oh chocolate seashells, so cute, so innocent. I thought, oh, just one little taste, it can't do any harm. But it turned out that the smell was rich, safe, buttery, filling, and it melts, God forgive me. It melts ever so slowly on your tongue and tortures you with pleasure.
Against you alone have I sinned, and done what is evil in your sight.
All right, how many of you have sometimes gotten a whiff of that hot chocolate and you ended up at the confessional booth? Or how many of you are trying to sneak that chocolate in church? And the comp turns around looking for you. Right? We do that to each other, don't we? We set up those confessional booths instead of celebrating with each other. This week I saw a story from a little event that you might have heard is happening. It's called the Olympics. And there's a man who's a decathlete. His name is Ashton Eaton. He's a great athlete. And his wife is also a really good athlete. She's a heptathlete. And so he went to cheer her on. And he got yelled at. Because he's an American athlete and he wore a Canadian cap because she is Canadian. Right? In that moment, he wasn't trying to be American or Canadian. He was trying to be a husband. And yet he got yelled at because he was trying to be there in joy for his wife. And somebody set up the confessional booth that said, oh, you can't do that. And we do this in so many ways, and we all must resist the urge because there's so much where my experience gets in the way of my relationship with you. My wife started school this week, and she had to change rooms, change grade levels, do all this stuff where it wasn't quite easy to hold on to joy. But when those kindergarten and first grade kids walk into her room, what do they want to see? Not the, oh my gosh, this isn't ready and that's not ready, and all that stuff, right? They want to see the joyfulness whooping that she is. The wonder of what can be in this classroom. And all of us are looking for that in all of the rest of us also. And yet we're so busy worrying about what we have to do or be, or all the stuff that's not quite ready, or all the stuff that we still need to fix or become or do. And it's hard to keep focused on the positive, isn't it? It's hard to keep focused on what's more important. And what's more important is that every single one of those kids need to know that they have a teacher who's there for them. And every single one of those people around you need to know the community that you can be with them. And when we set up rules to say act this way, when we're the comp saying this is the only right answer, we do that, obtaining tranquility at the price of relationship. And our own expectations on that other person, whatever that own expectation is, ultimately sets us up for failure because our spiritual job is to connect, not to control. To be part of each other's lives and support each other, not to make each other act a certain way. And we do that because everybody has, I don't know if you noticed this, but everybody has dysfunctions. I hope that's not a revelation to you. Everyone has things that they don't do quite perfectly, but here's the good news. They also all have strengths. And if we're so busy recognizing that which is not perfect about each other, we miss what is amazing about each other. Our mom sat there grumpy as could be. But she was grumpy because she was close to dying. She was struggling with what can be. And at one point, Vian is having to struggle with her own daughter. And Nuke wants something, and off she goes angry, and Vian looks at Armand and says, "What do I do?" And Armand, that grumpy old woman, thinks for a second, and then she says, "Throw me a party." Now, how many of you in that situation would have said, well, if you act this way, or do this thing, or treat her this way, how many would have had good advice? Me too. But Armand looks at her and says, be joyful. Something that seems to have no relationship to that, but it began to change everything. Because when we look at each other and we speak words of joy, when we speak to each other that helps us to see beyond just the problem right now that needs to be solved, not ignoring the problem, but looking at bigger than just the problem. When we speak those kinds of words, we are speaking God into each other's life. That other woman that I told you would come back to, her name is Josephine. And she was being pushed away, mostly because she was going to fit outside of things. She was being abused by her husband. And yet this was a town, of course, where order said you have to stay with your husband. And she left. Which meant that everyone else would have had to push her away. The rules say that's what you do. Vian looked at the relationship. He said, come here. Be here. Come learn how to make chocolate. And when Vian is going through her own crisis because of all the stuff that's mounting up against her, all the places where she doesn't quite fit in, all the places where she wants to hear the north wind and let it blow and carry her off to some other place that's simpler, some other place where the problems don't exist, some other place where she doesn't have to deal with the conflict any longer, she looks at Josephine and she said, things don't change anyway. And Josephine said, they did for me. And see, that's what joy allows to happen. Maybe it didn't change for Vian in that moment, but it did for Josephine. And the joy that Vian brought in allowed Josephine to see things and be things and do things that she hadn't before. And that's our job, is to try to speak that. And then Josephine returns the favor and begins to speak that joy back into Vian's life. And Vian begins to hear this wind more and more, but she says, but here I found something important. Because she'd always let the north wind carry her away before she truly was changed by relationship. But in that moment, in the moment with Armand, in the moment with Josephine, in the moment with each of these people, she let that relationship change her. So that finally, she could find a place where she could stay. At pastor school this last February, I found a book, an amazing book by John Aldrich Clanton. It's called She Lives. It's about Sophia wisdom and how it works in the world. Because Sophia wisdom, this feminine side of God, is about that which connects us. It's about that which reminds us of relationship rather than rules. Reminds us in every moment to figure out how to come together into what's better for all of us. Here's some of the titles in there. Wisdom's work of changing hierarchies into circles. Wisdom's work of interfaith collaboration, of nonviolence, of equality in a number of different ways. Wisdom works to change us relationally, where God comes in and speaks words into our hearts and makes us into something we've never been. But we have to learn how to listen to that new way of hearing God, that way of seeing beyond that which we've already set up, that which we've already caused to be true, so that we can hear how God is saying to relate right now, right here with this person who's sometimes grumpy like Armand, or estranged like Josephine, or mean like the Comte. And she wrote a song. that I wanted to sing to you. And it's a song that's the same music you guys wrote and sang, which is great music, isn't it? Great words about joyful, joyful. Listen to what this says. Wisdom works in every nation, guiding us to live in peace. Teaching, healing, care, and kindness, she will help all violence cease. Wisdom works through daring people, prophets bold throughout the years, speaking up for truth and justice, crying out for all to hear. Works of wisdom bring abundance, lovely works beyond compare. Wisdom opens doors of freedom, calling everyone to share. Like a tree of life, she blossoms, spreading beauty through the earth. We can join the work of wisdom, new creation, now to birth. Great words, aren't they? They're words that begin to let something new flow into us. Opens us up to something that we haven't seen before. Helps us to see joy where all we've seen are rules. Per Henri sits in a new parish with an overbearing mayor. He has a hard time finding joy right then. And that mayor, the Comte, he's so busy seeing life the way he thinks it ought to be, especially considering the fact that his wife has left. And see, he's in the same position as Josephine. If he admits that she's gone forever, maybe he'll be ostracized. And so he sits there not having joy until that Easter Sunday morning at the end of Lent, where everything fell apart. And the Comte, in that morning, finds himself in the window of the chocolaterie, where he'd been all night eating all those wonderful things.
Drink this. Drink this. It'll refresh you. I promise. Go ahead, drink.
I'm so sorry.
I won't tell us all. Better get cleaned up. Easter Sunday.
Sir. I didn't finish.
I'll think of something.
I'm not sure what the theme of my homily today ought to be. Do I want to speak of the miracle of our Lord's divine transformation? Not really, no. I don't want to talk about his divinity. I'd rather talk about his humanity. I mean, you know, how he lived his life here on earth. His kindness, his tolerance. Listen, here's what I think. I think we can't go around measuring our goodness by what we don't do, by what we deny ourselves, what we resist, and who we exclude. I think we've got to measure goodness by what we embrace, what we create, and who we include.
It was certainly not the most fiery sermon Père Henri would ever preach, nor the most eloquent.